my name is, ooh, all right. My name is Leah LaRue, and I'm the Director of Neighborhood Planning Units for the City of Atlanta's Department of City Planning. Let me get this camera right. All righty. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So it looks like we have a pretty small crowd, but no worries. I'm going to give you the same exact education and information that I would if we had 10,000 folks in the room. I'm joined tonight by two of my colleagues. I have Lance Templeton, who is our resources and support manager and the newest person of our team. Lance, you're supposed to say hello at this point, Lance.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Thanks, Lance. And of course, I think most of you know Tony McNeil, who is our program coordinator senior for outreach and engagement.
Good evening. Glad to be here with you guys.
All right, awesome. So this is a little different, but I am the instructor for tonight's class. So I am going to share my screen, and which I think I was supposed to do that before y'all even got in the room, but I'm a little, ooh, this is, hold on one second. All righty. So are you seeing, there we go. I think I'm doing that right. Do you see in front of you a screen that says instructions and a QR code? Yes. Awesome. So at this time, I'll ask you to grab your cell phone or your iPad or other devices, whatever device you use to communicate, and scan this QR code. It is a safe one. I'm scanning it myself because I always like to follow along and make sure that I'm seeing the right thing, which means that you're seeing the right thing. What you should see is a screen that says Mentimeter with a green arrow. It says you're all set. It looks like this. And there's a thumbs up at the bottom. You can click that thumbs up and we'll see it on the screen and we'll know that you are all set. All righty. And I'll give it another minute. We've got 8 folks in the room. I'm gonna wait till we have at least 6 thumbs up and then we'll get started. I do like to say this, if you have trouble scanning the QR code, there is a URL address on the screen. You can go to your browser and type in www.menti.com and enter the code 8152879. It is on the screen, so don't worry if you don't remember that. 8152879 at www.menti.com, or you can just scan the QR code if you know how to do that. Either one of those will take you to the same place. And I just ask that when you see this screen and you see the little thumbs up at the bottom, you click on that thumbs up or tap that thumbs up for me. Perfect. I see 6 folks and we're going to move on to the next one. All right. So I welcome you to NPU University. This is our Elections Integrity Clinic, and it is a part of our community leadership track, CL1006. This course is designed, of course, to strengthen our NPUs and our neighborhood associations, to empower them to operate with great integrity at their NPUs and in the elections. Real quickly, our classroom rules for tonight. Please do keep your microphone muted at all times. Please grab a pen and paper if you want to take notes. We will send the presentation out. I will note for those of you that attend NPU University classes often, you'll notice that one thing is very, very different tonight, and that is that Samantha is not here. Now, if you've been with us for a while, you know that Samantha is never here in August. She takes the month off just about every August to celebrate her birthday. Happy birthday, Samantha. So we are, I won't say we, I am always struggling when she is not around. I am struggling tonight, but we're going to get through it together. If you need to take notes, please do grab something now to take notes. We will send you the presentation. I don't really know how or when. I guess Tony or Lance or somebody will do that in Sam's absence? Okay, perfect. So we'll get you the presentation. You'll also get a survey, which Sam will tell you about at the end of the class. No, Sam won't. Somebody will tell you about the survey at the end of the class. Please do keep your cameras on in order to receive course credit if you're taking this class for credit, perhaps for our CPC, our Citizen Planner Certificate Program. And if you have any questions during the Q&A, please raise your hand to get in the queue. I'll show you how to do that very shortly. And our golden rule, all questions must be relevant to course content. All right, so to raise your hand at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a button that says reactions. If you click on that, you'll get a pop-up. And at the bottom of that pop-up box, it says raise hand. That's how you raise your hand. If you click on first reactions and then raise hand, you will appear in the queue, and it does show us who has raised their hand in order, so we'll know which order you raised your hand in. All right, so just to check our technology, I call this a tech check. Please grab your device and tell us what NPU or neighborhood you are representing. Grab your device and tell us what NPU or neighborhood you are representing. If you're representing a neighborhood association, you can jot that in. If you're representing a business association or an NPU, you can jot that down as well. I see we've got NPUI in the room, 2 folks from NPUI. Hello, NPUI. We have the West End in the room. They claim it's the best end. I'm not even going there with them. Not tonight. We've got NPUV in the room. Grove Park in the room. It doesn't rhyme with best end, but it is the best of the West. And we've got NPUT, Harris Childs in the room. Welcome, welcome. All right, and if you're just joining us, there's a QR code on the screen. You can certainly scan that now. And I'm going to move on, but you can at any time go to menti.com and use code 8152879 to catch up to where we are, or you can scan that QR code at the bottom of your screen. All right, so this class is for you if you're the presiding officer of an NPU or neighborhood association, or if you're the member or chairperson of an elections or nominations committee, or if you're the voting member of an NPU or neighborhood association, and you are anticipating a contentious or challenging election this fall, or you had a contentious or a challenging election last year, or you just want more information on how to conduct elections virtually, you will want to check the inbox of the email address that you use to register for this class. In order to participate in our Election Buddy demonstration this evening, we will be demonstrating Election Buddy, which is the platform that the City of Atlanta makes available to NPUs and neighborhood associations to conduct virtual elections. And we'll do a demo of that tonight, so you'll want to check your email address at the appropriate time. Or if you want more information on best practices for ensuring that your elections are fair, transparent, and inclusive. If any of those apply to you, then you are in the right place. All right, so let's jump right on in. What does the code require for NPU elections? The code says in Article B, Section 6-3017, that elections shall take place during October or November of every calendar year. If an election has not happened by November 30th, that election will be conducted by DCP. That's the Department of City Planning in December. Every year, I've been in this role for about 5 years, and every year I've had to conduct at least one election because for one reason or another, the NPU didn't get it done in time by November 30th. That is not a punishment of any sort. It really is just the city's way of ensuring that the election happens. So the Department of City Planning is required by code, as you can see, to conduct the election in December if the NPU does not have it by November 30th. And any person holding the office of chairperson or equivalent which is the presiding officer, so whether you call it a president or a chairperson, must be 18 years of age or older, and your primary place of residence must be in this particular MPU. Additionally, each set of bylaws has to include voting procedures for the MPU. Bylaws describing the voting procedures must contain provisions delineating the eligibility of voters within the MPU and the voting process itself for issues and for officer elections. So that's got to be in your MPU bylaws. And I would also point out that every resident, as defined in the code, represents one vote and can only hold office in one MPU. Why in the world would the code say that? The reason the code would say that is that, fun fact, you can be a member of more than one MPU. You could represent a business in one MPU and live in another, and you may participate in meetings in both places, but you can only hold office in one NPU. You cannot be the secretary of NPU-T and the vice chair of NPU-I. You can only hold office in one. All right. All right. Principles of integrity in elections. Grab your devices once again, please. And if you didn't get a chance to catch up with us, you can scan the code that's on your screen now, and it'll take you right to where we are. Or you can join at menti.com and use code 8152879. True or false? MPU elections must take place in November of each year. MPU elections must take place in November of each year. Wow, a lot of people are saying false. 2 people are saying true. We have, okay, 2 more votes. All right. So the correct, okay, we still got people voting. I'm glad to see folks are joining in. All right, we ready? Y'all ready for the answer? Should I do a fake? Can y'all hear my thumb roll? I mean, I said thumb roll. That was cute. I meant drum roll, but thumb roll is definitely more appropriate. How cool was that? All right, so the correct answer is false. NPU elections must take place in November or October of each year. They have to be completed by November 30th, but they have to take place in either October or November of each year. All right. False is the correct answer. All right. So we're going to get into the 5 principles of integrity in elections. First principle, and this comes from the 5 principles of integrity in elections. Number 1 is independence. Candidates and election administrators or committee members should not be intermingled. These are, when we're talking about these 5 principles, for the record, this is not, as you can see the link at the bottom, this comes from a resource entitled The 5 Principles of Integrity in Elections. It does not come from the state law, the city code of ordinances, or your bylaws or anything like that. It is a resource. That means that these are best practices, okay? So the first principle is independence. Candidates and election administrators or committee members should not be intermingled. You should avoid conflicts of interest, deal making, or any conversations that you could not hold openly. You do not want to plot and scheme or negotiate or handpick who should serve in which office. That almost always leads to a lack of transparency, for one, and a lack of integrity in your election. Candidates should not be election administrators. Candidates should not be committee members on the nominations committee or elections committee. You should treat all incumbents and candidates equally. And ideally, elections committee representatives should be independent from incumbents. Let me just elaborate just a little bit on what all of this means. Of course, the incumbent is the person that is running for office and has the advantage of currently serving in that same office. So if you are the president of the neighborhood association and you're running for president again, you're the incumbent. However, incumbents and candidates should be treated equally. Let's say that Tony and I are both running for president of the West End Neighborhood Development Group Association. Tony is the current president, but I want to challenge him for that seat. I would like to be president, and I've got all these great reasons why. Tony does not get to campaign just because he's running the meeting. He doesn't get to campaign and say, you should vote for me because blah, blah, blah. And next, we're going to have such and such on our agenda. That's not fair. It doesn't give each candidate the equal opportunity to vie for that seat. You also don't want Tony serving on the elections committee. The reason for that is that he's got an unfair advantage if he's serving on that elections committee and he's running for office. And more importantly, the optics. It just doesn't look good. It leaves the NPU or the neighborhood association open to criticism about what is or is not happening. Sometimes, and I find in the time that I've been doing this job, what I find is that most of the time, there's really nothing happening. People think that there's something happening and there really isn't. It's usually not what it appears to be. But we also know that you don't want to just avoid impropriety. You also want to avoid the appearance of impropriety. You want to avoid what looks improper. All right. And of course, as I said, the last one, election committee representatives should be independent from incumbents. You should not be doing both jobs. All right. Number 2 is transparency. Candidates and voters have a right to know how an elections office conducts its business. All election business should be transparent, whether it is the ballot design or the procuring of voting systems. Oversight boards should be subject to open meeting rules along with requirements for bipartisan representation. And once the polls close, where possible, the counting process should be live streamed. All right, so in NPU speak or in neighborhood speak, let me tell you what all of this means. The elections committee or the nominations committee should have public meetings. That's what that subject to open meetings rules part means. The meetings should be open to everyone. They should not happen in someone's living room. They should not happen in the library without public notice and no one knows that the meeting is happening. It certainly shouldn't happen on the phone. You know, a couple of folks gathering, oh, let's talk tomorrow night about what our approach should be. That's improper. What is proper is sending out a notice to all of the members saying, this is the committee. This is the chair of this committee. And this committee is going to meet on this date at this time in this place. And here's the agenda for that meeting. That is transparency. That is how your elections should be conducted. That is how the prep work for your election should be conducted. Additionally, this principle goes even further to say that there should be requirements for bipartisan representation. Now, what in the world does that mean for a neighborhood group, right? Because there is no, the elections are bipartisan. You don't register as a Democrat or a Republican or an independent in order to run for NPU secretary. Most of the time, we're begging people to run for that role anyway. So it's not about that. It's not about how you register politically. It's about which groups people represent. It requires a little bit of imagination. But if you know there's a hot button issue that has been on the neighborhood or the NPU's agenda for a long time, perhaps there's a big development that has carried over for some years and people have separated into groups. And you've got this group that is largely in support of this development and this group that is largely not. You don't want your entire board to be, your entire elections board to be made up of people that are on one side of that issue. You want people that are on all sides. You may have people that are fighting for speed bumps, and other folks that say, no, this isn't that kind of neighborhood. We don't want speed bumps in our neighborhood. We don't want that kind of feel. You don't want to have an elections or nominations committee that has all the folks on one side of that issue. Likewise, you don't want a situation where all of the officers come from one neighborhood. If you can avoid that, of course, this is volunteer work, and sometimes you can't avoid that. The name of the game is doing everything that you can to avoid that. And that's all you can do, as long as you're doing the most that you possibly can. You do want to have your counting of the ballots happen in as public a way as possible. Of course, if you use Election Buddy, it is as public as it gets because we share the results live and on the screen. All right, the third principle is integrity, clean hands. You want to limit opportunities for elections committees to act with unchecked discretion. You want your candidates or their designees, they should not be included in decision-making processes or discussions about nominations or elections. Candidates should not be, again, this is the second or third time I'm saying this, and you'll probably hear me say it a few more times before I pass the mic to Tony. Candidates and their designees should not be on nominations committees. It should not happen. You shouldn't be involved in the decision-making process. Again, most of the time, it is so honest and so innocent that we just don't have enough volunteers. The bylaws say we need 5 people on the committee. I can't find 5 people. I'm accustomed to doing everything in this neighborhood anyway, so I'll join the committee. But I'm planning to run for vice president. And little did I know, Lance is challenging me for vice president. I didn't know he was going to challenge me. Nobody ever runs for vice president, so I thought it was just going to be me again. Now he's challenging me, and he's telling neighbors that when I was on that the committee decided to have the election at 6 o'clock instead of 7 o'clock, and I must have done that so that I could trick people into missing the vote. None of that happened, but that's what it appears to be. And it only happens because I'm now a candidate sitting on the nominations committee. You want to ensure that all nominees are given equal consideration, time, and accommodation. I can't tell you how many times I've been at neighborhood and MPU meetings, and the nominees are someone will say, the person that's chairing the meeting, true story, and if I'm stepping on your toes, I'm sorry, but these are all learning examples. I think they're good lessons for everyone so that we know what not to do next time. But I've seen situations where the nominations person will say, so at this time, we're going to give everybody a chance to introduce themselves and tell a little bit about why they want to run for this office. And we'll start with this person. And this person talks, and every MPU has that very long-winded person or that slow talker who takes a really long time to say what they're saying. And you give them the mic. And then after that, you realize what time it is. And like, okay, so everyone else is going to have 60 seconds from here on out. But the first person that went was not given that time limit or that restriction. You want to plan in advance and make sure that all nominees have the same time to talk in the meeting or to introduce themselves or share the same accommodations, the same consideration. You don't want to give any candidate more time because they are a former elected official or because they are a neighborhood staple. They've been in the community for so long and you have this reverence for them or this respect for them. All nominees have to be given equal consideration. Lastly, on this principle, you want to avoid the appearance of wrongdoing or unethical conduct. If it's possible that proceedings could be perceived as questionable, change course. If it so much as looks like somebody could have a reason to blame you for anything or to complain about anything, change course. If there's a likelihood that significant issues could arise, then you want to ask an independent arbiter to be present to resolve those conflicts. The Department of City Planning is always available to attend elections and be that that third party that is not in the election, but is there to help resolve the conflicts. The city has an ombudsman that could also send a staff person to be an independent arbiter to be present and resolve conflicts. You could even get a community nonprofit from you could get an officer from a different MPU even to be an independent arbiter to make sure that these conflicts are resolved. All right, fourth, competence. This is important, often overlooked, but really, really critical. You want to anticipate problems. You want to think about all the things that could go wrong and perhaps all the things that have gone wrong in the past, whether it's your neighborhood or MPU or a different organization. And you want to create a plan to address them. For virtual elections, you have to ensure that your technology is tested and functioning properly. For in-person elections, you want to ensure that you have enough voting supplies and that they're functional and that they're clear. These are, like I said, this is a copy paste from another resource that had nothing to do with neighborhood groups. But let me tell you, I have seen all of this, including the last one, ensure that all membership records are updated with accurate contact information. I have seen every single one of these create a problem or cause a problem in a neighborhood or MPU election. I've seen MPUs run out of ballots in an election, paper ballots. I've seen MPUs have it not up to date membership records and spend lots and lots of time during a meeting arguing or debating over whether someone is eligible to vote. I've certainly seen, and we've been on the wrong side of that as well, not having our technology properly tested and thinking that we have a plan, especially in 2020 when we first started using Election Buddy. Some of those first elections were real rocky. We were still learning how it worked and we were experimenting and making mistakes and learning together. You want to do all of that. Have a mock meeting if you have to and test it and make sure that it's functioning properly. Because one thing that I've learned, and I believe I say this every year in every class, if an election is fair, transparent, inclusive, people are more likely to accept an adverse outcome. It may not be the outcome that I wanted. I voted for Tony and Lance won. I can live with that if I know that the process was fair, if I know that it was transparent, if I know that it was inclusive, if I trust in the eligibility list and I trust in the process, then all I can do is say, congratulations, Lance. As long as I know the process was right. But the second I think about that time that they had that meeting that I didn't know about, then I'm going to start in my head assuming and figuring out what could have happened to make Lance win instead of Tony. I bet they stole this election. I know that sounds a little too close to home, too familiar for all of us in real world scenarios. All right, the fifth and last principle is fairness. Treat all incumbents, candidates, and nominees equally, as we said. Communicate with members openly and frequently, and ask for buy-in. This is your saving grace. This one card is your saving grace. Does anyone have any concerns before we proceed? Hearing none, let's proceed. And then when all of the rah, rah, rah happens, you can say, I asked if anyone had concerns. I didn't hear any concerns. And so we moved on and we had the election. And that's that. But if you don't have that buy-in, and really that you should be getting buy-in all along the way, not just at the election. So it's not before we proceed on election night. It's all along. In any election committee meeting, in any nominations committee meeting, in any meeting that you're having, in any planning session that you're having, when you are in your meeting the month before the election and your bylaws may require you to open the floor for nominations, even then you want to say, does anyone have any concerns before we proceed? Give people time. And I know that it's easier to avoid all of the rah-rah in a meeting that you're trying to keep orderly. It's definitely easier to not ask that question, but it's better to ask that question. All right, let's get our devices out, myself included. True or false? This is an easy one. The current NPU chair should decide how elections are managed. The current NPU chair should decide, current NPU chair should decide how elections are managed. All right, all right, all right. I know that the screen says one person voted true and 7 said false. The correct answer is false, and I am pleased to announce that you unanimously got it right. I was the person that selected true. I was trying to throw some of you off, and it didn't work. Good job. The answer is false. The current NPU chair should not be the person that decides how elections are managed. The bylaws should decide how elections are managed, and the bylaws are determined by the members of the NPU, of the organization. All right, learning from our mistakes. And I'm going to ask for a little bit of discussion here. So if you'd like to raise your hand and weigh in on any of these, please feel free to do so. One of the first lessons we learned, a candidate for office appoints the elections committee members and conducts the election. Does anybody want to tell me, based on what we've discussed thus far, or based on what you know from your own experience, what is the problem with that scenario? A candidate for office appoints the elections committee members and conducts the election. No, nobody? All right, Miss Swanson. Capricia, is that how you pronounce it?
Capricia.
Capricia. All right, go right ahead, Capricia.
I think what's wrong is this candidate shouldn't have the say-so of how the meetings are conducted, the elections are conducted, because they I'm trying to read it. I had it in my head. A candidate for office appoints the elections committee members. I'm confused. I thought I had it.
That's okay. I'm going to talk you through it. So technically, in a lot of cases, the candidate for office may have to appoint the election committee members. Some NPUs and neighborhood orgs bylaws require that the chairperson determines all of the committee chairs. In most cases, I think that is the case. The challenge arises when the chairperson or whoever that candidate is conducting the election, especially when they themselves are a candidate. It gives you the appearance of impropriety, and it sets up a situation where a voter could contest the election or could complain that everything wasn't done on the up and up. All right. During an election, a candidate is told that neighborhood officers cannot serve as NPU officers. The candidate's nomination is withdrawn. After the election, it is determined that this is not indicated in the bylaws. That's a true story, and I happen to have been in the room when that occurred. A couple of years ago, there was an election happening, and a candidate was running for vice chair of the NPU, and the candidate was the current president of her neighborhood association. She wanted to be the vice chair of the NPU, and she was told during the meeting that neighborhood officers cannot serve as NPU officers. She then said, well, I'll withdraw my nomination. Nobody had bylaws. Nobody pulled up bylaws. Nobody looked at the bylaws. Nobody said, are you sure that's true? Nothing. She just withdrew her nomination. And then the following week, when there's all this chatter about that election, it's determined, they look it up in the bylaws, and it's determined that that's not even in the bylaws. That's not even true. But the election had already happened. The election was that night. It had already happened. And they had already elected a vice chair. Who's to say whether that person would have been elected as vice chair had they not been given bad information? So it is critical that you do that competence principle of the five, it's important. It's important that we prepare in advance and that we have all of the necessary materials, including bylaws, ahead of the election. All right, another true story. An MPU's November agenda was too long, so they deferred their elections to the following months. What happens when you do that? What happens when your meeting is too long and it's now almost 11 o'clock and you haven't gotten to elections yet? So you say, I'd like to make a motion to defer this to next month. What happens? Anybody? All right, I'm gonna pick on my coworker. Okay, I hear somebody. I was about to call on Tony. Who do I hear?
Stephanie. Stephanie.
Hey, Stephanie, what
Hey,
happens?
you all have to come in and do the elections if it's December.
Exactly.
So I was
Exactly. If
in
the
my
elections are
meeting.
not done November 30th, we will have to do the elections by November 30th. We'll have to do the elections in December. Or the MPU could call a special meeting. I always advise against that.
Yeah.
But the MPU could call a special meeting at another point in November, keeping in mind, though, that November is usually very busy with Thanksgiving. That holiday in and of itself takes up a lot of that last week of November. And congratulations on an exceptional National Night Out, Stephanie. MPUV did a great job. All right, number 4. During the election, it is discovered, yes, ma'am. During the election, it is discovered that there are no eligible, willing, or present candidates for certain officer positions. The current chair is term limited and cannot run again. This, too, has happened more than once. What can you do to prevent that from happening? At the election, where it's election night, we're all about to vote, and we discover that there's no candidate for vice chair. There's nobody here that's eligible. Maybe the bylaws say that you have to have attended 4 of the last 6 meetings in order to be the vice chair. And there's nobody here who attended 4 of the last 6 meetings and is willing and interested in running for that office. And maybe that one person who is couldn't make it tonight because it's November and she's traveling for Thanksgiving. What do you do in that situation? Anybody? Miss Calhoun, hello.
Okay.
It was good to see you on Tuesday.
Yes, it was. I guess I have a question because I thought that perhaps the chair could run for an additional office, an office other than chair. So would she be eligible to run for vice chair? She or he be eligible to run for vice chair?
That depends on the bylaws. That
Okay.
depends on the bylaws. In some MPUs, the chair, if they are term limited, they could run for another office. In some MPUs, they could not. It really depends on the bylaws, to be clear. It depends on the bylaws.
They amend the bylaws to allow the chair, the current chair, to run again.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about this because it has happened on, I think, 3 occasions that I can think of, maybe 4 occasions at this point, where either the night of the election or just before the election, I'm getting frantic calls from the MPU saying this is the situation that we're in. The recommendation is that you always check your bylaws regularly. You're checking your bylaws to ensure that they still make sense for your MPU. Sometimes they used to make sense and they no longer do. Things change, neighborhoods change, organizations change, and sometimes what used to work for us no longer works for us. It used to be that we could afford to require people to have been an active member for 2 years before they serve in office. But now we haven't done the outreach and we haven't done the succession planning. So we don't have anyone lined up to be candidates for these seats. And we still have this really strict requirement. So you want to always check your bylaws and make sure that your bylaws still work for your MPU or your neighborhood association or whatever organization that you're conducting elections for. That's important. And you just want to do succession planning. You always the one of the things that we did in my neighborhood association several years ago, we did a comprehensive bylaws rewrite, and we had some issues with succession planning. We, to be fair, we still do. I don't know if anybody's here from my neighborhood association, but if so, you can wave your hand and say amen, because you know I'm telling the truth. We still have those issues with succession planning. And so we added a clause in the bylaws. I don't remember the exact language, but basically it says that if the president is serving in his or her second year, he or she must prioritize succession planning as part of their agenda for that year. You've got to prioritize it and start identifying folks and recruiting folks to run for office, knowing that this is the last year that you can serve in your own seat. All right, lastly, a member is not listed on the eligibility list and is not allowed to vote. After the election, it was determined that the member was actually eligible to vote. Another true story. All of these are true stories that I've personally witnessed or experienced or been in the room for. This was a, well, it's happened a few times, but the first time this happened was at an in-person meeting, and the person was in the room and came to the meeting that night to vote and was told that they could not vote because they were not eligible. They had not attended the requisite number of meetings. They learned after the fact that they had indeed, well, the person said that night that they had indeed attended the requisite number of meetings, and it was proven, but the election was already over. So certainly some lessons there. And if anyone wants to weigh in on this, feel free.
Leah, I would like to say how we handle it over in NPUV. So we introduce our eligible voters prior to our November's meeting. And we give them the whole month of October. If they want to come in, look in the sheet and go through and count their votes up, they are more than welcome to do that. To just eliminate them saying that they had. I mean, you can come and sit down. They can't take the sign-in sheets home with them, but they can come to a location, and the committee, one of the committee members would be there, so that they can go. They have to go through themselves and look. They're not going to look for them, but they'll just sit there with them while they do it, so they can count their names and they can look and all of that stuff.
That's exactly what we recommend, Stephanie. That is exactly what we advise.
But when they see the papers, they run. They be like, "Oh no, we got to do it ourselves." Yes, you have to do it yourself.
Yeah, I attended. I remember this very clearly because that meeting was, it was a lot that night. But in an NPU, the chair is no longer. She was term limited out, and I think she's moved out of Atlanta at this point. But about 5 years ago, there was a woman who was very angry. She was irate and accused the chair of limiting her right to participate in the process because she wasn't on the eligibility list. And the chairperson pulled out this big thick binder. This is before Zoom meetings. Pulled out this big thick binder and said, "You can look at the sign-in sheets if you want." And the lady spent the next hour just sorting through that whole binder, looking for her name, and ultimately determining that she had not attended enough meetings. But yeah, the bottom line is that if an NPU publishes eligibility lists at least a month in advance, you will give members the opportunity to cure problems, to say, this says I only attended 2 meetings, but I know I attended 3. I know that I did. I have evidence that I did, or I can tell you the 3 meetings that I went to because I remember the 3 items that were important enough to me to show up. Whatever it is, you've got to tell people in advance, publish the eligibility list in advance. And I also encourage people to publish the list of eligible candidates as well. If you're not candidates, but people who are eligible for office. So you'll publish, it could be one list with all the members and one column that determines that, or that indicates that they're eligible to vote, and another column that indicates that they're eligible to run for office as well. That is very, very important, and it definitely prevents a lot of drama. All right. How can NPUs or neighborhood orgs ensure that members trust the process and feel confident in the outcome? Anybody want to take a stab at that? And that's based on what we just discussed. How can NPUs or neighborhood orgs ensure that members trust the process and feel confident in the outcome? Remember what I said. If people know that it was transparent, fair, and inclusive, they will feel confident in the outcome, right? Even if they don't like the outcome, even if their person didn't win, they will still feel confident in the outcome if they can trust the process. All right. Okay. Best practices. I'm going to run through these real quickly because there really is no one size fits all for NPU or neighborhood elections. You want to start by identifying a person or committee to handle all things elections and ensure there's buy-in from the body. You want incumbents who are seeking re-election to not participate in the elections committee process or engage with the elections committee. You want to meet publicly and announce all meetings. Y'all remember that part, right? You want to publicize your eligible voters and your eligible candidates. You want to ensure that the body feels confident with the process and go the extra mile to create a nominations process that is open, transparent, fair, and equal for all candidates and nominees. I'll tell you, a few years ago, my NPU, I told you my neighborhood association redid our bylaws pretty much from scratch a few years ago, but my NPU did as well a couple years ago. And I'll tell you, what was in the room was a bunch of folks that didn't necessarily trust each other, a bunch of folks that didn't necessarily like each other. But what came out of that room was what I consider to be a best in class nominations process. Truly. My NPU's bylaws outline a nominations process that is open, transparent, fair, and equal for all candidates and nominees. And it was the one thing that everybody had to agree on, whether they were friends or liking each other or good neighbors, bad neighbors, distrustful, whatever. Everyone agreed this is a good process right here, and it has worked. 7, make an honest effort to include representation from all the stakeholders and include a neutral third party if you have to. You don't always have to, but if you know that it's contentious and that people aren't going to trust in the process, you don't want folks coming out of it complaining that it wasn't fair, include a neutral third party. And neutral does not mean your friend or a member of the NPU or a neighbor, friend, or your pastor. That's not a neutral third party. A neutral third party is truly someone that does not have a stake at all. And if you want a process that members trust, you want to make these your priorities. If you're taking notes, please jot this down. It's very important. You want to make transparency, inclusivity, and representation your priorities. Follow your bylaws and the code of ordinances. I can't tell you how many. In fact, today, I got a call today. But I can't tell you how many calls I get each year from people who did not follow their bylaws. They were not intentionally not following their bylaws. They just didn't realize that the bylaws give details on this and on that and on how to do this and how to do that. You've got to read your bylaws and follow them if you're participating in the elections process. Go out of your way to avoid the perception of misconduct or wrongdoing. Invite feedback from the members on the nomination and voting process. Communicate, communicate, communicate. You can't communicate too much. You can't. You can send an email to all the neighborhood presidents to make sure they know when the meetings are happening, or make sure they know who the nominations chairperson is, make sure they know when the nominations are happening, when elections are happening. You can send emails out to all the members. You can do a phone bank. You can do a text chain, whatever it takes to communicate and over communicate. I also encourage people to announce it at the meeting. Starting in August, telling people, hey, we're having elections in October, we're having elections in November. If you're interested in running for office, here's what you need to do. Here's who you need to talk to. Here's the bylaws. Make sure you read the role and the responsibilities and the requirements. The best advice I could give you is to communicate in advance. Don't wait until election night to say, for Miss Calhoun to say, I'd like to nominate Miss Flowers for vice chair. And then you say, oh, she's not eligible. And then you have this whole big discussion in the meeting on why she isn't eligible and whether she's eligible. If you communicate in advance and you publish your eligibility list, you will have a process that members trust. If you anticipate a problem, invite a neutral third party. All right, let's grab our devices. And this is the end of my part. We're going to move into, this activity is the end of my part. We're going to move into the election buddy demo. We've got 8 players ready. If you grab your device or your phone, your iPad, your tablet, whatever it is, you can, I don't have the QR code up, but you can go to menti.com and enter code 8152879. We've got, looks like 9 players are ready, so let's go. Let me say this. I'm going to ask you 5 questions, and I want you to, I want you to get the answers right, and you got to be quick on the draw too. So you want to be one of the first ones to answer. Okay, is everybody ready? Everybody ready? Everybody ready? All right, let's go. Answer fast to get more points. We have a prize. Complete this sentence. Per the code, in order to be blank, you must reside in the NPU. You got 15 seconds left. In order to be blank, you must reside in the NPU. All right. Oh, 3 people got it right. Let's see who. Zach, Tweedo, and Frosty. And Zach was the fastest. All right, Zach, so far you're in advance. You're in the lead, I should say. Zach is the chair of NPUX, y'all. All right, let's move on. Question number 2. We got 8 players ready, and I think we had 8 on the last one, so I'm gonna go. Which is not one of the 5 principles of election integrity? Remember, which is not. And if that's small, I'll read it for you. Integrity, honesty, fairness, transparency, competence. Which is not one of the 5 principles? Integrity, honesty, fairness, transparency, competence. Okay, we got 4 people that got it right. That's good. The answer is honesty. Good, good, good. And looks like Tweedo is taking the lead with 1,814 points. All right, all right, all right. Let's move on. Question number 3. I got 8 players ready, so I'm going to go. You ready? Let's roll. According to the Department of City Planning, according to the Department of City Planning, the priorities are transparency, inclusivity, representation, transparency and representation only, or all of the above? Transparency, inclusivity, representation, all of the above? I think everybody got it right. Yay! It's all of the above. Good job, y'all. And Tweedo is still in the lead with 2463 points, followed by Zach with 1767 and Frosty with 1244. All right, I think we have one or two more questions. Yeah, question 4. Is everybody ready? Don't drop out, y'all. There is still hope for you. Okay, there's 8. Let's go. When should eligible voting members list be published? On election night, as early as possible, anytime before the election, or at least 1 month before the election? When should the eligible voters list be published? On election night, as early as possible, anytime before the election, or at least 1 month before the election. Wow, only one person got it right. It's at least 1 month before the election. And I'll tell you why the answer is not as early as possible, because so many people chose that. I want to tell you why that's not right. As early as possible is too subjective. You could publish that list the day before the election and say that was the earliest that you could possibly do it. I couldn't do it any earlier than that. I didn't have the materials. I didn't have the this, or I was waiting on this person to share this with me. It's too subjective. As early as possible could mean the night before the election or even the day of. That's too subjective. The correct answer is at least 1 month before the election. And let's see who got that one right. If I could move on. Why is it not moving? Tony, you're the one that got it right. Good job, Tony. Woohoo! Good job, Tony. It didn't get you to the lead though. Tweedo was still leading with 2,400 points, followed by Zach with 1,700 points, and then Tony with almost 1,600 points. All right, last question, y'all. Last chance to get in the lead. Final question. All right, we've got 8 ready, and let's go. Your NPU's election process is outlined in the Code of Ordinances, bylaws, Robert's Rules of Order, all of the above, or none of the above. Your NPU's election process is outlined in the code, the bylaws, Robert's Rules, all of the above, or none of the above. Awesome. Awesome. 6 people got it right. It is in the bylaws. And to be clear, the reason that the other answers are wrong is that your NPU's election process is not outlined in the code. No one's election process, no NPU's election process is outlined in the code. The code just gives very few guidelines for who can be elected, but not what your election process is. And Robert's Rules does not either. Robert's Rules, if you follow Robert's Rules, your bylaws take precedent over Robert's Rules. So you first follow the law, and then your bylaws, and then Robert's Rules. All right. All right. And let's see who won. This is it. Tweedo. Congratulations, Tweedo. You won. Woo. That's the audience clapping for you, Tweedo. All right. I don't know who Tweedo is, but if you want to identify yourself in the chat, we can send you a nice gift. We have a gift for you that we would love to send to you in the mail. All right. Tony, I believe this is your part. Are you ready?
Hey, Leah, this is actually Lance's part.
Oh, my
Requested your
bad. Well,
support.
let's go, Lance. Y'all throwing Lance right on in, huh? Okay. Let's go, Lance. We're here to support you. Y'all be
Hello,
easy
good
on
evening
Lance. This is his
again.
first time.
I also have a confession to make. I'm a little competitive, so I am Tweedo, so we're going to need to give it to someone else.
Are you serious? So that means Zach won. He was second place. Well, you won, but Zach gets the gift. We're not giving you
Exact.
it.
So the thing is, I also missed that question about the how early should you announce your eligibility as well. So that's not an inside job.
Oh, he said he wasn't second anyway. He was fourth. Um, hold on now. Let me see who was second. I can always look at it later too. I thought Zach was second. Please don't tell me it was Tony. Come on now.
Tony was second.
Well, actually, that's great. I'm glad to see that y'all are getting it right. Frosty was third. So whoever is Frosty, you're the person that wins the prize because staff will not win this. Although I'm glad that I would have been fussing at y'all if you came in at the bottom. Because do you ever listen to me at all? But Frosty won. Congrats to Frosty. Let us know who you are, and we'll send you a nice gift in the mail. But Lance, take it from here, please.
All right, so good evening, everyone. By now, you should have already received at the same email address that you registered for this class with a ballot, a sample ballot for tonight's election. You could just give me a thumbs up or let me know if you are having an issue accessing that ballot. I can take care of that for you, but also did a precursory search. All right, thank you, Ms. Swanson. I see a thumbs up there. Anyone else that cannot locate their ballot that they received?
And let me just say this while we are, because I'm sharing my screen so I can't see the people. But let me say this: if you can't see your, well, I can see the people. I just have to change my view. If you can't see if you don't have your ballot and you have a Yahoo address, check your spam folder. And then Lance, it might be helpful also to let people know what time it was sent because I understand that it was sent
Yes, it's
early.
around 12 o'clock.
Okay.
So what I can do is I can identify the people on this list real quick. I just want to resend it to those. Thank you, Zachary. I see it was received at 2:22. All right. Capricia, I see you have yours. Anyone else is missing theirs? And I can resend right now.
I saw one. Am I on that list? Because I thought I saw one today, but I don't know. I don't
Yes,
see
you
it
are
now.
on that. I'm gonna resend you yours right now.
Okay.
Zachary, you have yours.
Oh, I see it. I got it. It's
Okay.
222 from NPU Atlanta. I got it.
Stephanie, I see yours on here. Addie, I see yours as well. Brenda.
Oh, thank you, Zach. I see. Thanks, Zach.
All right, thank you, Ms. Glover. I'm gonna resend yours right now, so it'll be at the top of your MPUI email address. Okay.
And do you want people to not vote yet? Because
For those
if
of you who have
so,
received the ballot, please go ahead and vote.
oh, we can vote. Okay. All right. Who are these people?
Ms. Glover, you should have an email back at the top of your inbox that says email reminder to cast your ballot. And please check your junk mail as well. right, I have 4 ballots submitted. Oh, Stephanie fell off, so she's not on anymore. So, but I see that she has not yet voted. Leah, did you vote already?
I did.
All right, let me see if we got it over here. All right, I got 6 ballots. I see that you did vote. Oh, Stephanie did vote did vote as well. Going to refresh again. So right now I have 7 ballots submitted. Now I have not voted, so that would be the 8th one. And Tony, you'd be the 9th. All right, so looks like we have our votes are in. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and close the voting window now. Let me see something real quick. Oh, Miss Glover, I don't see your vote in. Okay, I see it now. Thank you. I don't see it, your vote from NPU either. Did you possibly use a different email address?
What do you mean you see it, but you don't see it from NPUI?
So for the chair.npui@gmail.com,
Yeah.
I see not voted, and I do see that I sent one reminder. So it does not show me that that vote occurred.
So, um, hold on one second because I'm pretty sure. Okay, and we didn't. Okay, hold on one second. Most likely, I suggest moving on because most likely, um, what is happening, let me share my screen again, sorry. Most likely it is the last 3 are, did I do something wrong? I'm sorry, I'm trying to share my screen.
Oh, the last 3 are not voted until voting ends.
Correct.
So I will go ahead and close now. And we are tallying the results. And you're correct, Leah. So the last 3 did not show, but now I see Ms. Glover's vote. And so our results are in. For the chair, we have 6 votes tallied, 1 abstention.
Hold on, because you're not supposed to read it out loud. You're supposed to show
Oh.
them. But hold on, let me just get my screen back up. One moment. All right, so this is the screen that should be up while you check the email, etc. And we're past that point now. This is the ballot that you should have seen. All right. So Tony, not Tony, I'm sorry, I keep saying Tony, but it's Lance. You have the results now?
Yes, I do.
So I think you're supposed to be sharing your screen.
All right, if you could please just let me know if you see my screen. All right, thank you. So here we have our results. And so it also shows you the number of votes tallied and the percentage over here in the right-hand column, as well as who the winner is. We're able to see the graph results. So we have a different multitude of views here in which you're able to see the data as it's represented. So this is a good tool to use for added transparency and for the voter audits. So thank you, Ms. Glover, for putting in your confirmation code, because it is, again, replicated right here in this table. And then these results are available to be downloaded and reviewed.
I wouldn't show that on the screen because this is recorded and you've got people's email addresses on the.
Correct.
I learned that from Kip.
My apologies.
Yeah, when we did it for APAB, I had it up on the screen. He's like, no, that's people's email addresses. I was like, oops, my bad.
And that is that concludes the voting section with Election Buddy.
Thank you, Lance. And so I'm going to replace your share and let's see what comes next after that. Results available. We got that part already. We saw who won already. Just reiterating that regardless of the outcome, members feel good about the election if the process was transparent, inclusive, and fair. Well, before we get to that, I'll go ahead and take questions. I know Ms. Walker's hand is raised, and if anybody else has questions, you can go ahead and raise your hand as well.
You want me to go ahead now, Leah?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. I saw on the election buddy for the vice chair that it was a tie.
Mm-hmm.
So when there's a tie on the election buddy, what do you do?
If there's a tie, whether it's election buddy or not, the bylaws determine how the person is selected. Typically, there's a tie-breaking vote from the chair, or it just depends on what the bylaws say. And if the bylaws are silent, then you revert to Robert's Rules of Order.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Anybody else have questions on anything in the class tonight, on NPU or neighborhood elections in general? Any questions on the code? Any questions on election buddy? I don't see any hands. I don't like to rush people. So what I'll do is I'll move on to our closing screen. And if you do think of a question, you can go right ahead and raise your hand and we'll take that question. I'll tell you, technology is getting ahead of me. I can't even move to the next screen. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing and then share again and see if that helps. Oh, child. All right, there we go. So we've got some upcoming courses and events, and I'm very excited to invite all of you to join us at our 50th anniversary celebration. I know you've been seeing 50th anniversary stuff all year long. I'm really happy about that. But the legislation that created the NPU system was signed on Tuesday, August 13th, 1974. So on August 13th, 2024, to the day, we will be celebrating the birthday of the NPU system. We have a really fun party from 11 to 1, lots of food, of course, because that's how we do. We've got some music and cake, of course, and we'll hear from some really cool folks and get to see all the people that have contributed to making the NPU system what it is. So that's Tuesday the 13th at 11 o'clock at City Hall. I would love to see you all there. There is a registration link at npuatlanta.org. Again, that's npuatlanta.org. I'll ask Tony or Lance to drop a link in the chat. So if you'd like to attend that, please register. It's a table event, so we have tables and chairs. So if you want to come, please do register so we can be sure to have a seat for you. Upcoming NPU University courses on Thursday, August 29th at 6 o'clock. In our housing security series, we have Navigating Mortgage and Renter Challenges, a guide for Atlanta residents. Our Code Enforcement Academy begins Wednesday, September 11th at 6 o'clock p.m. And then our Advanced Parliamentary Procedure class, this is a mock meeting, is on Thursday, September 12th at 6 o'clock p.m. And then we've got our Bridging Generations, Community and Civic Engagement in Atlanta. This is a panel discussion talking about the generational gap between the baby boomer generation, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z. So it's going to be a really fun panel and luncheon, another tabled luncheon event. Limited participation is limited space rather is available, so it will only be registering, I think, 100 people for that session. So if you're interested, please do register. And last but not least, that's it. Follow us on social media. If you do not already follow us, please do. You can follow us on Facebook at NPU Atlanta. You can follow us on Twitter at NPU Atlanta, on Instagram at NPU Atlanta. And I don't know what the music symbol is. Is that TikTok? Maybe TikTok at NPU Atlanta. Is that TikTok, y'all? Tony? Somebody?
Yes, that's TikTok.
TikTok. Okay, great. So TikTok at NPU Atlanta. And of course, we're on Nextdoor and on YouTube also at NPU Atlanta. Does anyone have any other questions for us or for me? I do not see any hands. I'm going to check the chat real quickly. Oh, the survey. I forgot the survey. How come that wasn't in the presentation? I forgot about the survey. Yeah, so please do take the survey for this class so we know if there's anything that you'd like us to do differently the next time we do this class. Please do include that in the survey if you thought it was excellent. If you thought the instructor was great, please do put that in your survey. I appreciate you so much, and I will not belabor the time. I will wish you all a wonderful evening. Thank you so much, Tony, and thank you so much, Lance, for your help with this class, and thanks to all of you for being here. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Mhm.
Good night.